Victoria. That's Shannon. Thanks.
Oh, we're not going on TikTok, Richard?
I'm too old for Instagram, let alone TikTok.
Yeah. Well, my kids tell me Facebook is for old people, Dad. We don't go on.
From what I was reading the other day, it's also a lot of business stuff might back out of it because it's owned by a company that has ties to various other Chinese political aspects. It's an interesting thing, TikTok.
Right, yeah.
Now, for those people that are in the room, we do have the YouTube link available now. I've copied it into the chat function on this website. If you have colleagues that can't get through the Zoom link or would prefer to watch on YouTube, that's there as well. And also, if you want to share this to your team afterwards, that video of today's session will remain available permanently on our YouTube channel at that link, and also through the AutoTalk Professional Development screen on autotalk.co.nz. So just a couple more minutes while people go on to there and that's emailed out, and then we'll kick off. Okay, cool. That's up and running. So just while that ticks out, I guess we'll start off with the housekeeping. Look, thanks everyone for coming along today for the latest in our AutoTalk professional development webinars. For those who haven't been here before, as I said, you've got this option to watch on Zoom, or you've also got the option to watch on the YouTube live link during the down in the chat comments. Now, we are an interactive webinar, so to speak. We're more than eager if you have comments or questions through the event to make them through the chat function or the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen if you're using this on Zoom. If you're on YouTube, feel free to just pop a question in the chat function on the YouTube live screen, or if both of those fail or you just can't be bothered, feel free to email me a question to richard@automediagroup.co.nz, or you can text it to 021 556655. We'll pick all those up. Some of them will answer during the event, during the process of the event. Some of them will come to at the end as this goes on. So that's there. Thank you very much. Now, today we are talking a very important topic for every dealership in New Zealand out there, because it's at the absolute heart of your profit within the business, and simply for most people, the ability to even sell vehicles. And that's your finance and insurance sales. We've got two of the best in the trade joining us today. From Oxford Finance, we've got Shannon Beech, and from Autosure, we have Warwick Bourne, and these guys are part of the kind of DPL Turner's group, Turner's automotive group over the last couple of years. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
No worries at all. Now, I guess, and this we start every seminar with this at the moment. A lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, we've all been preaching for a very long time, but it's kind of been crystallized over the COVID period, the need to transact and do more online. But it's kind of a time where we don't want to lose the message that we've had to, or the techniques we've run to during the COVID period. I mean, would that be a fair little question to start the day off?
Yeah, I think so. And you're right that working towards a more contactless end-to-end process and what sort of digital resources we have has been something that companies like ours have been investigating for probably the last year or two. And COVID really did heighten the fact that all of a sudden these were essential to how we transacted business, as opposed to being something of a luxury that were or not a luxury, a nice to have if you had them in place. And I think that as we saw in COVID, as we started to use some of these tools more, people have become more trusting of them and more reliant on them, and realised that the efficiencies that they provide us really are here to stay. And why would you go backwards when you can just keep moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think whether it be purchasing a car or my food bag or your local countdown, people have become a lot more comfortable purchasing via online. And so we just see this continuing to grow. Okay, we're back to level 1 now, but we still think digital sales will continue to increase.
Mm-hmm. Now we'll get a little bit further down the track into some of the processes that are now in place, allowing you to kind of process your finance and insurance business through those online functions. I know you guys have got some new things that have been coming on board and you're working on. But at the start, I mean, looking at how people or encourage people to start their buying process and look at what their finance and insurance needs are. For a long time, we've discussed about getting people to fill in applications online, or at least documentation line to give you a bit of an assessment of them before they even walked on the dealership. I mean, what are the advantages of getting someone assessed early in the process through your website for their finance and insurance needs?
It just streamlines the process, and it gives the buyer more confidence when they go out and hit that dealership. I think we've noticed for some time that that consumers have been armchair shopping and building more comfort with that. And I know from experience that that customers walk into a dealership, they often know more about the car that they've come to see than the salesman, because they have looked online, they've compared, they know what the nearest 3 or 5 cars in the vicinity in similar dealerships, what they're priced at, what or how they compare in terms of specs, mileage. Consumers really have got better at investigating themselves what they're looking at purchasing, and by using online tools like online applications and reading the specs, viewing the photos on a vehicle, when they hit the yard now, they're ready to go, or they want to be ready to go. They feel more confident knowing that they're armed with all the decisions, or the majority of them being made for them, and being better educated before they walk in, because we know in this industry it's often quite daunting for people, and they're a little bit put off by walking in and being oversold to, I think is quite a big concern for some people. They want to know that they've got their shortlist narrowed down, they know what it's going to cost them, they know that their finance is pre-approved, they know what insurance or protection there is in place for them personally and for their vehicle, so that when they go in, they're ready, and they've got that little bit of confidence, as opposed to being caught on the fly of, have you thought about this? They want to be able to say, yes, I have, and I know what this will do for me.
Absolutely. And anything that we can do to be talking to customers about budget rather than price of a car just means that you can make sure that you're putting them in the right vehicle. Even with a pre-approved loan, there can often be a disconnect because they've been onto Trade Me, they've picked their trade, the highest price for a like vehicle, and so they think they're going to get top dollar there. So even with a pre-approval, it's still important when they go into the dealership, the business manager or the salesman qualifies them around the mechanics of the deal to ensure that you're not setting them up on a vehicle that they're not actually going to be able to finance because there's 2 or 3 grand's worth of discrepancy in the trade. So the more that we qualify them up front, whether that be via a finance company or via the dealer's own website, the better we can tailor the package to make sure that they're maximising every ethical dollar for the dealership's perspective, but also ensuring that the customer's got the right protection package and made the right choices for them.
Mm-hmm. Not on our question list, but just off that, do you think buyers potentially are more willing or less awkward about supplying their financial information when they're simply facing a computer screen and filling in a form than perhaps having to discuss it in person with someone later down the track when, rejection hurts, I guess? Do you think people are perhaps more willing to do that when they're not having to do it in front of a person?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a degree of that, knowing that by filling in, somebody's online application form, whether it's, through a dealer or a finance company, and downloading that there is no embarrassment, no face-to-face, and they can get an instant reply on that. But obviously there's still an element of the sales role to be done in helping qualify these people, as Warwick was saying, because getting an instant answer is often quite black and white. So there is still that heavy degree of being able to counsel somebody through the process and let them know what they can afford, and what that means to them in terms of affordability.
And I think they're absolutely more comfortable. They've picked the time and the place that they're filling this in, so it's probably at home when the kids are in bed or they've got some spare time. Statistics tell us people are prepared to spend less and less time looking for a car. The days of loading the kids up in the car and spending all weekend looking at car yards is long gone. They're probably only going to look at 2 or 3 different yards. They'll have done the research, like Shannon said, and they're really only wanting to spend sort of 60 to 90 minutes on the whole process. So the more they can do before that, and the more that you can start building trust via your website, via your branding, via your electronic interactions with them, the better.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of how much having a solid online application process like that impacts your penetration, both on the finance and the insurance side? And I guess the question is, we've got the age-old thing at a dealership: a cash buyer walks in, and a lot of the time they've already got a bank loan, but by doing that, it's harder to sell them protection products and so forth, because you can't necessarily wrap it in quite as easily. I mean, do you think the dealers potentially would be looking at better penetration on the broader spread of their products by having that good tool there that kind of filters out those opportunities?
I'd love to say yes with my insurance hat on, but in reality, it just makes the conversation a bit easier for the salesman or business manager when it comes towards the deal. Unless someone's had a mechanical breakdown insurance before and claimed on it, they may think this is a reasonably new car, low Ks, I won't need it. People's views around payment protection, given what's been happening of recent times, is becoming more popular, but people inherently don't think the worst is going to happen. So when they're looking at these deals, and this is why it goes back to budget again, they're often factoring in no protection whatsoever. If there's a headline interest rate, they're assuming they're going to get the best interest rate, even though that may be for a homeowner. So this is more about creating awareness of the products and making that conversation for the car dealer easier to have. Mm-hmm. But from a finance perspective, I would assume it helps.
It does help. It's a hard one to gauge, because there are still a lot of people that sitting at home and researching what sort of car they might like to buy or they can afford. You do get people that will apply online on multiple sites just to get a sense of a weekly payment or whatever it is they're looking at. There is still a mentality to try and look for the cheapest weekly payment, which is not necessarily realistic in terms of what interest rate they might actually qualify for, and what added benefits they should have in that contract at the end of the day. But it does come down to, I think, that these online applications and the online shopping, we are arming consumers now electronically with more information. So they've got some comfort in that.
Fantastic. So, I mean, what kind of systems and tools are around and in place now to assist dealers with doing this online or remote F&I sales process? I mean, starting from the people who are doing it just advanced with a walk in the dealership through to people who may not even want to sign the documents in the dealer anymore.
Yeah, you can basically run the whole process end-to-end contactless now. There are options, digital options that range from bank account sweeping or downloading of bank statements. That's at the click of a button. It's completely safe and secure. This, from a finance perspective, you can then have set up your own scorecard in the background, or your decisioning tools to run an affordability calculation on the bank statement. So affordability can be assessed, like I say, almost instantly at the click of a button. ID and customers ID verification online uses similar technology to the passport station at the airport. We can ID people remotely without having to see them, without telling them you need to look up a JP in your area or a lawyer or a police officer, send them down the road with a piece of paper to meet a stranger and have that person sign a form to verify who they are. You can do that digitally, and now there's digital signing of documentation as well. So I think for a while people thought you could use electronic signatures and cut and paste somebody's handwritten signature, which you can't do. These digital solutions now are more around timestamping and recording exactly who that customer was in terms of cross-referencing email addresses and phone numbers that they gave us, and then recording when they've clicked on a document to agree with the terms and conditions put in front of them.
Right, right.
And from a insurance perspective, our system's pretty simple. It's all, it can be all paperless. There's no requirement to sign any documentation. And upon acceptance of the policy, it's automatically emailed a copy of the policy and the booklet to the customer. So they instantly get all the T's and C's that they require. So it's pretty straightforward. In terms of the sales process itself, Autosure has the menu option selling tool, which we use face-to-face with customers, but can also be emailed to a client, give them time to read it, and then contact them either via email or phone and talk them through the various options. So they're in complete control of which package they opt for, and it's a very time-efficient, compliant way of making sure that you've explained the features and benefits of all the products. Customers made the decision, and when customers are well informed, they tend to purchase the more appropriate product for themselves, and then that's auditable. So you've got a electronic record of that transaction. So you could never have a customer say, "Oh, you never offered me that. I would have taken it if you had," because it's there in writing.
Mm-hmm. Shannon, can you just explain how the identity verification process works in just a little bit more detail? I mean, are we talking about sending pictures, or what's the process of that?
With the product that we use at Oxford, essentially our dealer or broker has the option through our quoting portal to push a link to the customer. The customer then opens up the link. It asks them to take photos of themselves, headshots, one front on and one at 45 degrees. You then literally photograph your ID, so your driver's license. And what the tool does, it actually measures points on your face and distances between eyes, nose, whatever. And it gives a percentage match to the person in the photo. It's smart enough. It doesn't matter if you've lost weight, gained weight, grown a beard, lost the beard, most of the time. And it should give you, it gives you a match, as I say, in percentage. They actually say anything over sort of 85% you can be pretty safe with. We've set ours a little bit higher, but you can tell on review. The only times we find really people fail is not following instructions, not knowing what 45 degrees is, standing in bad light, or an old faded driver's license photo, but you can swap that out for a passport. So it's pretty clever, it's painless. And we see from the photos that we get of customers getting back to how they are shopping now and applying for finance and insurance online, the number of photos that come through that are clearly from home, from people taking them. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Any thoughts on how much more secure this is than perhaps the older ways of doing things, where someone would bring their passport, driver's license, a bill to prove their address, and perhaps a printout of their bank statement to the dealership? I mean, do you feel this is more secure or less secure than those ways?
I definitely believe it's more secure. We find that in terms of looking back at the odd fraudulent case and how potentially these technologies that we have now, how they could have mitigated that. I believe that it's often hard for somebody when they've got a customer sitting in front of them and they look at a license photo, and somebody might say, "Oh, does that look like him? He looks a little bit different." There are those people that won't want to challenge the customer, and they'll take them at face value. We've had family members. We had a fraudulent case once where a gentleman applied using his parents' names and details. He looks similar to his dad, but if you were actually to run a check and do a digital check on him, he would have failed a test like that. I've instructed some dealers of ours to say, getting back to my point just before, that if you're not confident that somebody who is in that ID photo and you're worried about the confrontation, this doesn't have to be a non-face-to-face tool. Tell them it's part of the process and this is how you're IDing them. Push the link. If they fail it, then it buys you some time and you can say, look, I think you need to go down and see a justice of the peace and have this signed off, to prove that you are who you say you are. So I think the tools are definitely of benefit to us and offer greater protection.
Fantastic. Dealers always like it when things are covered a little more securely. That's a really good way of looking at it. We've kind of covered this a little bit already, but I'll just see if there's any other ideas or thoughts there from both of you. I mean, using these digital platforms to transact business. I mean, what's the clear key benefits you guys think over manual or face-to-face processes? I mean, clearly the security is a big one, and that ability to pre-authorize before they even walked on the yard. Any other thoughts around what the benefits are?
I think it's a lot less pressure for the customer, so the customer's going to be far more relaxed. But with that, you have got to be super careful about your communication style, grammar, spelling, professionalism. They're not getting the opportunity of meeting you and get to know you first. So communication is key. Timeliness. So if you've got an inquiry that's come through at 1 a.m, you've got to get onto it as soon as you're into the office. Don't leave it for a couple of days because they're gone. And probably as soon as you do get the opportunity or the okay to pick up the phone and talk to them, go for it, because even though you don't have that face-to-face recognition, at least with voice, you've got tone, whereas with when you've just got written communication, things can be translated differently. So I'd recommend getting on the phone as soon as the customer's giving you the okay.
We know more and more business is being transacted remotely, whether it's brokers signing up remote customers or dealers, selling a vehicle to somebody who lives in a different city. Using these sorts of tools means that they can transact business with much greater efficiency. There is still a very heavy obligation on them to ensure that they are doing full disclosure on the products they sell. So as Warwick said, you need to still be on the phone and making sure that you're very clear about what the purchase is, terms and conditions and the like. But this just makes the rest of it seamless. And there's no need now for printing, putting pen to paper, scanning it back. It is just a safer, quicker process.
So you say there the explaining in terms and conditions and so forth. I mean, how is that done? How is that disclosure done? I mean, is that done through someone reading something and clicking on it, or does that still need to have that time spent between the salesperson or the business manager and the customer explaining that stuff in detail to ensure that that's buttoned down?
The digital signing tools actually allow time. You set it to make sure that they can't just go and click through and sign instantaneously on everything. We need to know that we've given them the time to read the document as well, and that they haven't just jumped through. And our advice is still to intermediaries to make sure that you do full disclosure. These people need to understand you can't just email off a document, let them sign it and say your job is done. There is an obligation there to complete full disclosure, and they still have to do that. So that's an over the phone conversation.
I would say the same with our disclosure is around talking to them over the phone, but then following it up with, and I'm now going to send you these those topics through to you via email. Can you please reply to say that you've understood, or alternatively, if you've got any questions, let me know.
And I guess one of the advantages is if anything does go wrong, you've got that digital trail there to show that you have had that discussion and that you have made that attempt to disclose and help the customer understand the product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Have you got an idea of how quickly dealers are shifting to using this kind of digital process? How much are you requiring them to do it now, or is it just a gradual shift as they pick up and update their own processes? What's the situation with that?
I guess we're in pretty unique times at the moment. I know that we were really pleased for the motor trade, the bounce back in May, and how strong sales were across cars F and I. So, yep, I think it's heading that way, and we see more and more inquiry from our dealers around out of town sales, which has been happening for some time, which is obviously either phone or internet. So yeah, it's growing. I wouldn't like to put a percentage on it, but the key is still to maximise those ethical dollars and that F&I income when the customer isn't in front of you.
Yeah, you'll always get people who are a little bit more cautious of using sort of some new technology and want to do it the old way, but look, the current situation has definitely highlighted a need to progress forward, and we have found the uptake and the request for services like this has increased in the past month or so.
Fantastic. Now, all this is obviously quite a different process to what dealers may be used to, or business managers may be used to. How do the sales processes differ, and are the sales strategies for these products the same as if you were sitting on the other side of a desk from someone trying to process a deal?
I think the fundamentals stay the same. If you're a business manager and you know you've got a customer coming in, you normally try and get as much information on that customer prior to them coming in via the salesman. And potentially, if the salesman's been communicating with them over the internet, they will have some information. Just like as if you're in your office, you make sure that you're ready for that interaction, so you're not distracted. You don't, your salesmen know that you're offline, so to speak. So it's making sure that you've got all the information you need to be able to have that sales conversation with the customer.
Yeah, I agree with Warwick that the strategies are still pretty much the same, and a customer who does still, whether or not they come into the yard, they are looking for that affirmation that they're making the right decisions, and they are speaking to the salesman or the business manager as the professional in this situation. So it's trusted advice that they're seeking confirmation on. The difference now is that they've done their homework, or they think they've done their homework, and that the business transaction doesn't have to be face-to-face.
I mean, you still want to qualify their needs, you still want to build trust, you don't want it just come down to a price on a car.
I guess this is a slightly delicate question, but I think it's worth discussing. As we're seeing this process, I guess, somewhat simplifying the process of dealing with finance and insurance sales and making it quicker and more convenient. There's a lot less paperwork to deal with. Does it change the kind of line as to where a dealer may need a dedicated business manager? Does it modify that at all, or is it really just another tool in the business manager's arsenal?
I still think, as Shannon was saying, you still need a professional having the conversation and pushing the buttons. And an F&I really comes down to the size of your business and your stock profile. We're always having those conversations with dealers, and we can do some cost benefit analysis for them to see if it warrants a business manager. But that's probably a conversation around the dealership rather than electronic versus face-to-face, because I would argue if you've ever been rung up by somebody trying to sell you something on the phone, there's those that are very skilled at getting you talking, and there's those that you just hang up on. So your business manager might require a slightly different skill set, or be stronger in verbal communication or written, but I think those fundamentals remain the same.
I mean, it would be fair to say this kind of shifts that business manager role from being more towards the end of the sales process to being right at the start of the sales process.
I mean, ideally, as we said earlier, the earlier they're involved, the better. So, I mean, it will come down to the dealership, how inquiries are handled. So electronic inquiries potentially are handled by the business manager, who's talking budgets and monthly payments before they really settle on a car, and then he might hand them back over to a car salesman.
I think as a country, and as the human beings that we are in New Zealand, there is still an element of wanting to touch it, feel it, try it, to give you that little bit of extra confidence. The difference now is how you can do that. So you don't have to go to the dealership, but even if you look at the number of photos a dealer takes of a vehicle now when they advertise them, you can't just get away with 4. People want to see every aspect of the outside and interior of the vehicle. How big is the boot? They want to know that vehicle before they commit to it.
We're seeing really successful results out of, and I know it's a bit awkward and uncomfortable when you first do them, but a video on the vehicle, or getting comfortable that when you're communicating with a live customer, rather than doing 120 videos for all the cars, you're personalising it. You've got your phone, you're doing it there and then and sending it to them and saying, you know, hey, Julie, I know you said that boot space was really important. Well, look at this. I can get 4 golf bags in the back or whatever it might be. And that's really coming to the fore now.
I think the joy of if there's a positive to the lockdown for business, it's just been people so much more willing to embrace and consider that technology side of things. I'll just take a very brief break here just to say to the participants, if you do have any questions that you'd like answered at the end of this event, and you may not do because these guys are answering these very, very fully and well, then now is the time to ask them through that chat function or through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Moving on, I guess, sort of tying into what you were just saying, as we have these online application processes for F&I now, I mean, how important is it to include that process within your online vehicle listing? So you have a Trade Me listing for a vehicle. I mean, should you have a brief description there of how to go or where to go to start the process for the finance application?
It's still a bit tricky because there are some restrictions around what you can show in your photos in Trade Me. But yeah, I guess it's just having that finance and insurance options available. A lot of people in their own websites are advertising weekly payments within the photos that aren't on Trade Me. They've got our banner or our products or Oxford's, and so they've got that subliminal messaging going ahead. But yeah, Trade Me is a tricky one.
I think what's key is making sure that your ads set the right triggers and entice people to click through to your website, where there you make sure that you have the ability for a customer to, if they can't get a quote so much in terms of finance, but at least an inquiry to send it through, so that the business on the other end knows, okay, I've got somebody looking at a car and they've actually got an interest in finance and insurance.
I mean, with every email inquiry that comes into the business or text inquiry, is it a little bit cheeky or too forward to send back as part of your full reply a link or a page address or something to go to offer them the chance to start that application process?
Never too cheeky. Highly recommend it. And that's the thing, a lot of people will send in an email inquiry and they'll just ask about the car. At that point, you know, your salesman or your business manager, whoever is picking up those email responses, needs to really make sure that their reply includes options for finance and insurance, whether the customer asked or not. I wouldn't assume ever that the customer is a cash buyer, because we know that most cash doesn't come out of savings or what's sitting in the bank.
Yeah, anything that you can do to broaden the expectations of the customer around what solution you may have for them, because at the moment they're throwing a dart at one car because in their head that's what's in their budget. The more you can broaden it and say, hey, look, let's have a chat, because, you know, we've probably got more than one car here that will suit your needs, and some pretty clever packages that will get you into them.
Fantastic. Now, this is kind of the open part of the discussion. I mean, tell us, if you could just do a quick run through of what the online platforms you guys have at the moment. I understand you're kind of pretty much end to end now, right through to digital signing. Can you just give us an indication of where Autosure and Oxford are at?
Sure, do you want to go first?
Sure. So at the moment, Oxford uses Illion bank statements for bank statement retrieval. We've had a big uptake in that just this month, which has been fantastic to see. As I say, it makes our lenders' jobs much easier. The way those bank statements are delivered to us, it also categorises and groups up expenses in terms of you know, what the outgoings are, also your income. It makes an affordability assessment a lot easier to process. We use ID verification through CloudCheck, and as I discussed before, that's a great way to have a person, if they're not sitting in front of you, to be able to confirm that they are who they say they are in the ID that they've provided. And we've already done a check on that driver's license as well to know that it's valid. The product that we are moving towards launching at the moment is secured signing, for digital signing. So this will ensure that customers have time to read through their documentation, and they will be signing and initialing the document as they go. We've got the added benefit in there of asking questions around disclosure. So the intermediary who sends that documentation out has an obligation and will confirm that they have gone through and fully disclosed the terms and conditions of the document to the customer. And the customer on signing is again verifying as well that they have had everything explained to them.
Brilliant.
Yeah, done.
And from your side, Warwick?
Forward.
Yeah.
She knows her product.
Yeah. So we launched our new dealer portal last year. It's called Generator. And within that, I guess the biggest change for dealers is that they put in the VIN number or the registration, and the system will select the category and the premium for them. So it will underwrite it for them. In the past, they used to have to look at a rate chart, work out where the vehicle sits, and then pick that. And, you know, human error, sometimes people pick the wrong one, always seems to be to their advantage, not ours. But anyway, that was just luck, I guess. But now it will select it for you. It has all our products in the one space, and it'll if you've already sold one product to a customer, then it'll pre-populate their personal details onto the next one. The quotes are valid for 28 days. So if you've quoted, you can always come back and finish it off. As I said before, email addresses are more important than ever now, because the minute you complete the policy, it gets emailed to the customer. So there's no disputes over what they were given. So that's a really good fail-safe for the dealer. One thing that we're working on that should be launched in the next few weeks is where a car falls slightly outside of our criteria. So it might be a couple of thousand Ks over our maximum Ks, or a year over our maximum age. There we will have the ability for automatic underwriting. So it'll just potentially approve it straight away for you, let you know that it has, or alternatively, it might put a slight loading on the premium for you. Or if it's quite a way out, it'll still refer it to our underwriter, all electronically. You have a pop-up window, you put some information in it, like we've got full service history, New Zealand new, one careful owner, all that good stuff. And that will get emailed directly to them, and they will assess it and update the system. So it's a lot slicker than the old days of having to ring your account manager and then talking to the underwriter and coming back to you. So it's the more we can automate, the better.
Fantastic.
Other than that, the dealer can run sales reports out of the system. We've got a toolbox of rate charts and useful information in there for them as well. So we're really proud of it, and it's been, well, given that it's a new system, you know, change is always difficult, but it's been positively received.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, if customers from either side want to get a little more up to speed with what change is happening or what's coming if they're not already, or want some assistance to bring their staff up to speed with it, who are they best to contact? I'm assuming your regional account managers on both sides, or?
Absolutely, yes. Or failing that, they can always contact me.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Look, I think we'll have one more question, but just last call for questions from the panel. It looks like everyone's pretty quiet today, but you guys, how are you feeling about confidence with the year going forward? How are you seeing the trade returning? We had a very good, in the context of things, a very good May. From what you're seeing and what you guys are predicting, how do you think the rest of the year is going to go?
I'll go first.
Off you.
Thanks. June has continued in the same vein as May. In fact, it's probably even stronger, and we're getting daily sales in excess of pre-COVID. So that's a bit surprising. I do potentially believe it could go a bit like that with as mortgage holidays finish and wage subsidies and redundancies start to bite. I think there could be some challenges there, but there's also some great opportunities. One of the things that New Zealand's got going for it is it's got a pretty old car park. So a lot of these decisions are out of necessity rather than desire. So those cars will still break down and require replacing. So there'll still be lots of opportunity for our customers.
Yeah, I basically agree with what Warwick said. We've always been a nation of car drivers, so I think that the market will recover fairly robustly as a result of that. At the moment, there is talk, is this just the post-COVID bubble, but the results are strong. There are some more telling times to come over the next few months, but I think for the most part, we should be pretty pleased with how we have bounced back after lockdown.
Fantastic. Look, thank you so much for joining us today, Shannon and Warwick. We really appreciate your expertise and advice on this. To everyone attended, thank you as well. Don't forget the link is available on YouTube, and that will stay there should you want to share this with your team or your colleagues, and make sure that you're all up to speed on the, I guess, this, I wouldn't say rapidly growing, and that it's stuff that's kind of been coming around for a while, but this increasingly important world of making sure that you're doing all your sales processes as completely as possible online. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers.